All right, the highly anticipated part two interview with Brett Gennarelli. So, if you didn't listen to part one, I recommend you go out there and you listen to it just so you can kind of get Brett's background and how he got to where he got to now. So now Brett works in our business. He's an absolute beast at buying properties. I'm telling you, this guy knows how to get deals, and he has learned from years of experience now how to communicate with sellers, how to get houses, and how Brett personally, changed his life by getting involved in the real estate business. So Brett, let's do a Cliff Notes version on how you initially got into real estate, and then we'll start talking about, what do you and I do on a daily basis to get deals? Because we've been buying 8, 9, 10 properties a month for the last couple of months. So clearly we're have a system figured out.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like a plan. So yeah, the quick notes version is I was working at a Kia dealership selling cars for 6 months. It didn't end up working out in the long run. It wasn't the right vehicle for me. I was getting up, going to the door, trying to get every customer that comes in the door. And I remember the owner or the manager actually yelled at me that the other employees weren't getting enough attention from people walking in, and that I should sit on the phone more and try to get my own people to come in. But when I wasn't on the phone, I would just sit by the door. I was like, I'm sitting at my desk for 8 hours. I would work eight in the morning to 8 at night some days. And I was like, I'm not going to just sit here. Like, I'm going to try to get a deal. So anyway, it was just not working out there. Wasn't the right vehicle for me. So I applied to Lexus in Ramsey and went in for the interview. I told him a little bit about myself and whatnot, and didn't have much experience. He's like, that's perfect. You seem like a great candidate. I'll call you. Calls me the next day or the day after. He's like, what's up, man? I'm going to send you some paperwork. Like, we're going to hire you. We're bringing you on board. He goes, yeah, you're going to make like $2,000 a month and then whatever commissions. And I was like, I'm going to make $2,000 a month salary? And he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, like what? And I was like, oh. He's like, what was your other thing? I was like, I was just working commissions. He was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, I was like basically going broke. I was making, $400 a week or something like that and spending 60 hours.
You're making $400 a week?
Yeah. So sometimes I can, if I got enough deals, but there was a draw. So if I did like 4 lease signups in a week, that's just hitting my draw. So like I had to like really sell used cars and whatnot. So I was hyped. I was like, yes, I still had Cat 5 at the time. I was like, let's go. I'm going to be making like, average money. I was like, I'll make $2,000 a month plus whatever I could sell. And I was like pretty confident. I was like, I love cars. I know cars. And I was getting a little bit better. I was getting my feet wet in sales. So I was like, all right, this is perfect. And I was so excited. And I got a call from my buddy, Greg Hellback. And I was just like, what's up, man? And you were like, hey, what are you doing for work or whatnot? And
I remember this too. This was back in October of 2019.
Yeah. I was like, dude, I just got a job at Lexus Ramsey. It's a nice dealership. You were like, hell yeah, that's amazing. You're like, okay, because I was just calling about one of my investor friends. He's looking for an acquisitions guy. So I was just curious. I knew you were in sales because we were talking about Kia for a bit. So yeah, just to give you guys some background too, me and Greg have been good friends since high school. So yeah, we've been in communication way before Velocity. So you knew about that and you were like, yeah, I knew you were getting in sales. So I was going to give you the opportunity to maybe get into real estate. And I was like, real estate? So you always hear that real estate's a great business. You hear it's a great investment for your future. You hear that, there's money in it. And for me, it was about making as much money as I can to build my Cat 5 business. I was like, if I can make more money, if I need to buy marketing, if I have to buy more product, like it's going to basically increase my chances. So I had to make a very big decision. And I was like, man, like what's that job look like? You were like, it's just straight commission, no salary. Like you're going to be calling people. And I was like, okay.
And this was for a friend. So listen, this was for a friend of ours. Like this was like, yeah. I was basically like being like a little mini headhunter for my friend. And then that's what I was trying to.
Right. This was not working with Greg directly at this point.
Yeah.
It wasn't until years later that happened. So yeah, this was at least 3 years ago. And I sat that night and I was just thinking, like, what do I do? On one hand, I have a job that's going to make me more money than I ever have. Like, if I can pull in 5, 6, 7 grand a month at this dealership, that's more than I've ever made yet to this date. So I was, or not to this date, but back then I was like, that's amazing. And it's guaranteed. The guy was like, I like you. I'm going to hire him. I'm going to teach you everything. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, this is walking into instant income, basically. Yeah. And I'm thousands of dollars in credit card debt and trying to get my head out of water. So I'm like, this is amazing. But on the other side, I just kind of went back to that long-term thinking. And I was like, man, I'm 23. I think I was 23 when I started with Paul. And I was like, if I could start now and really, make it further in real estate, in the long run, that's going to be a better investment for me or a better decision. So long story short, I sat on it that night and it was one of the hardest decisions I made. And I told Lexus, I was like, hey man, I'm not coming in. I got another opportunity. I'm sorry. And that really seemed like a good vehicle for me. And I think they would have done a decent job. But so and that's when I started with Paul, our good friend, Paul Del Pozo. He's a great guy.
So you started buying houses. So now you're in the thick of it. So, you've grown a lot since then, since your elementary years in real estate as a rookie, right? So like, let's talk about like when you got started, right? Because you had jumped right into the fire. So you were basically, dealing with sellers virtually. You were living in New York at the time, and you're buying properties mostly in Florida. So like when you got started, like what was your first like 90 days like? Because like it was just, you had a lot of leads coming at you. You didn't have any experience. Didn't have any money. Like you were just kind of like totally fucking running around,
Yeah.
You had a shitty laptop. You had like a fucking clunky like PC. You were just
I had I had my HP. God, first time working at home. So I mean that was a learning curve in itself too. Because when you work from home, you have to be pretty self-motivated. So I mean that was a little bit of a curve working from home, the first thing. But I loved it because I didn't have to commute to work and whatnot. So I was like, oh, this is cool. So yeah, first 90 days. I mean, we were just getting leads in and I would basically call them back. I worked my way in. I didn't know a thing about real estate, literally nothing. I didn't know much about sales. I was in sales maybe 6 months. But I was like, I'm going to commit to this. This is my future. Like I'm going to give it 100%. And basically I was like, let's go. And then I started getting shitted on basically. I'd pick up the phone and I just would sound like I would read off a script. I had a script, the first, couple months, and I was so nervous and I'd just be like, oh, can you tell me, the property? And I remember calling people and I would have a couple realtors were usually the most rude. I'd have realtors, what? Who are you? Why are you asking? And just completely, roast me. This one lady was like texting us like, don't ever tell that monkey idiot to call me again. Like it was a little bit, it wasn't, that was a couple of sellers. Most people were nice, but basically the first few months I was just getting used to trying to listen to what someone's saying and then trying to figure out what I'm going to say at the same time. I was just like, and I, it's hard to do that. So basically, that was the first 90 days. And then from there, I, started to figure out the process more, knowing what questions I want to ask. Paul was very good at getting me login credentials for sales training. So I was doing sales training every day. So I was taking it very seriously. So I would, and I took my personal development very seriously at this time too. Because I knew that would really impact my future. So I would write down, I'd for 30 minutes or an hour a day, do sales training, like every day, consistently do the sales training, and you're going to get better. And I was like, okay. So started learning like impact questions, picture perfect questions, calibrated questions, all this shit. I had no idea, just because I have to get over the part of just like actually listening to somebody first. Yeah. And then I started getting, learning the questions to ask. And then it started just drilling, the more swings at bat, it would just get drilled into my head. So then I would worry less about what I was like thinking about saying or doing, and more listening to somebody, asking them an open question, listening, and then kind of just going with that conversation. So that was basically from 90 days, I didn't know anything and how to whatever. And then after that point, I basically had to just get the process down pat. And then once I knew the process, I knew that anywhere I was on the process during that phone call, whether it's in the beginning or the end, if we steer off of that process, I now knew how to get them back to the process. So if we start talking about Nancy and Joe and the neighbor and the house is dilapidated, then, I can be like, okay, go into that a little bit in case there's something there that maybe we need to bring to the surface. Like, hey, I have this problem, like blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about it. But then it's, okay, well, if we could solve the problem and get you a good price for the house, when would you actually want to sell? And then basically having that power to bring people back onto the process helped me start getting deals. Because
you're always directing them. Yeah, you're always
right. So no matter how much like of an idiot I might have sounded in the beginning, I just knew as long as I was to get them back to that process and eventually to the close, that's what I needed to do.
Totally, bro. So you got your teeth cut first 90 days, you learned the systems, you had a very good run with the other investor and they ended up wanting to go down more of a commercial path. So at that point, you were able, you wanted to still stay in the residential game. So, as the other investor went down that commercial path, which is a great idea for them, you wanted to stay in the residential game. So the way that you did that was you actually reached out to me. You were driving me to the airport. This is a funny story. And you're like, hey, so-and-so actually is going to start going more into commercial. I want to stay more in residential, et cetera. So, what would you want to maybe work together? And you were driving me in my car to the airport, I think, or no, I was driving. No, yeah, we were in my.
I was driving your car. I was driving your car back.
Yeah,
because you needed.
I drove you to the airport with you in the front seat, and then you drove the car back, and then I shipped it. So I thought about it on the plane ride there, and got back, and got back to San Diego, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, at the time, I didn't think I had like a real like opportunity. I was like, I had like these bullshit beliefs, and it's funny how like I said that now, and to look where we're at now, it's ridiculous. But like, I was like, oh, I don't know if I have enough leads. Like, I didn't really know like. I wasn't really looking higher, I wasn't really looking for someone. Like I was just kind of like, I was me and Anna, and we were just kind of like doing our thing. And I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? Like, this would definitely make sense if I actually think about like a way to like. I wanted to like say like, how does working, in our business, how is it going to benefit you, right? Like I like thought about you first. I'm like, how does it benefit this guy? And then when I actually like logically figured out how it would benefit you, we had a conversation. Actually, we had a couple conversations. And like, while we're doing this, you were helping me out with other houses. Like you were going and running around and finding some, putting lock boxes on some of the houses I was doing. So like, you already were kind of like making some money with me. And then like, once we kind of figured out like the systems and like, once we kind of got you rolling, like, fortunately for me, when you started working with our team, like you already had your teeth cut. You already kind of like paid your dues, like with getting your ass beat. So you were really able to hit your stride, and then we started turning up the marketing. So now like fast forward, you're buying more houses than you ever have before, our business is starting to grow tremendously. So I figured we spend the rest of the show today, like really talking about how do you and I get like so many houses in our markets compared to other people? Because a lot of people, that I talk to, that you talk to, like they have a tough time finding deals. The sellers, like you and I, obviously we're not amazing, but we're pretty damn good at what we do. Actually, I would consider us amazing at this point, but just to totally blow ourselves on this podcast. But like, we're in the same market as the competitors, but yet when we compete with people, we generally, not every time, usually we do win the house. So like, what have you seen by doing this? Like you've been doing this business now for a while. Like what makes you different against the other people? Because there's some things that we can explain. And then there's other things that are just like, it's like an intangible, like kind of character trait, like the certainty. So I'll just kind of let you start jamming here, dude.
Yeah, totally. Quick side note. Yeah. And so what intrigued me so much to hit up Greg too was, I was making, $1,000, $2,000 a month, and Greg would be like, "Hey, bud, can you drop this lockbox to this house? When it closes, I'll give you $1,000." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And I learned that in an hour of my time, I made $1,000, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like this is something to be."
Go back, kick court.
Yeah, and that too. So yeah, it was a referral deal that we had closed. So I was like, wow, there's definitely, something here. So to answer your question, what kind of divides us? It's like,
So real quick before we get into that, so
yeah,
you said something to me last week that was funny with the Kit Court deal. If you don't mind telling that real quick story with the money you made on that when you didn't
yeah,
know. Remember we
yeah,
had that conversation? So what happened there?
yeah. So my neighbor, Mr. Gore, he passed away, maybe 5-6 years ago. And about 3 years ago, I was going on walks every day, and I would walk past his house, and it was empty. But his son would mow the lawn every 2 weeks and like make it look nice. So it looked like someone was living there, but I knew no one was living there. So I kept walking by every single day, and I was just like, man, like there's no one living in this house. Like I wonder if he like wants to sell it. I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, well, if he wants to sell it, I don't have money to buy it. I don't have hundreds of $1,000s to buy it. And I don't know who's going to give me a loan. I was like, let me call Greg because he's been buying houses. He probably knows a way to get this done. And so that's what happened. I called you up and I was like, hey man, there's this vacant house here. Like no one's living in it. And your ears perked up. You're like, what? A vacant house inherited, So I said, we got inherited vacant house on our hands. What do you want to do about it? And you immediately took action, got the seller on the phone, called some relatives, got the seller on the phone, made a deal happen. You called me along the way a couple weeks in. You're like, yo, I'm buying the house. I was like, fuck yeah. And then you said nonchalantly on the call, you go, oh yeah, you mind if can I throw you $6,000 for this? Like 3 on the front end, 3 on the back end. And I remember being like, $6,000. And to me at the time, I mean, $6,000 is $6,000, even now that's a good chunk of change. So I was like, holy shit, this is what I make in months time. Now back to the time thing. I was like, this would take me months to make. And we're just making it on one thing that I referred him. All I did was call him. I didn't even do anything. I just called you and was like, hey, there's a house here. So that was the story. You were like, can I give you $6,000? And I said, yes, you could give me $6,000. It was like, I thought that was more than fair. And
I remember I like Zelled you the 3 and you were like, holy shit. And then I'm like, yeah, we'll close this thing out in like 3 or 4 months. I'll pop you 3 on the back end. You're like,
yeah,
okay, that sounds good.
yeah.
Like,
So that alone had a huge impact on my life, brother. So that was, yeah, I mean.
So yeah, that was just a fun, because I remember like, I don't know what your expectations were, but like maybe you were thinking like 1,000, 2,000. And I'm like, yeah, I think I made $90,000 on that house, like net. So I'm like, yeah, I'll give Brett 6. I just made fucking 90. I mean, albeit I had to, raise the money and not years of experience. So it's not like
I did the rehab and everything.
Too. Yeah, we did the whole thing. We got permits and everything.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think I assumed finder fee was like $1,500 or something like that. So that was, 4x of what my expectations were. So yeah, you heard me on the phone. I was like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So let's focus in on the house buying. So like,
what
do you do today that makes you great at what you do? Because you really are, man. Like, what do you? If we have to like not like what is our company theme? 95.5. Like what are the critical things that we have just tried and are continuing to master that allow us to convert deals that are convertible?
Great. So I would say number one is that our core values of the company of Velocity are in line, and we stand by our values very strongly. Like doing what we say we're going to do, working with integrity, urgency, the same urgency if someone called me up for a product I was going to make $20 on or a house that we're going to make 20 grand on, it's the same urgency. So basically, having good core values and living by those every day, and then having a really good process. So being able to confidently say that you're going to help this person, that you can either buy their house or wholesale it or however you want to exit, as long as you're totally transparent with the seller and telling them exactly what's going on, you're going to build trust. And when you speak to the sellers, you're going to have a lot of conviction because you've done it multiple times and you've helped many people and you really believe in your process. So when someone comes to you with a problem and you listen and you have a solution for them, I feel that most people are looking for that solution, but not everybody gets the deal. So it's basically come down to, in my opinion, who can build the most trust with a seller based on you listen exactly what's going on, you identify the problem that they have from your own perspective. And once that's all on the table, everything that you know they're looking to do, and you come up with the solution for them, and you're completely in conviction that whole process, they want to sell you the property because they have confidence in you. So price becomes a little bit less involved at that point. So to answer your question about competitors, we've gone to houses where people have offered $10,000 more, even $20,000 more than us.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But when the person had the problem and they reached out, we called them back a minute later.
If a minute later, sometimes
we call them back right. Basically, we see it come in, and me and Greg's ears perk up, and we grab that lead, because we were talking about this yesterday. With investing, it's about timing. You know, you bought Bitcoin 4 years ago, you got millions of dollars. You buy it 2 years ago, and you're dead broke. A lot of people lost money.
Yeah, you lost all your money.
Yeah, so every investment is timing. You never know when you're going to get a deal. So to treat every single lead until you qualify, at least until you get them on the phone to either qualify or disqualify them, every single lead could be that deal that makes you $100,000. So just having that urgency, I'm going to call you back at 6, Pete, doing what we're going to do, our core value, working with integrity, and just being persistent and just calling them, figuring out what's going on, showing up to the house, and then, hey, are you going to shop other offers? Yeah. Oh, this guy offered me $20,000. And then just ask, how do you feel about that? Oh, he seemed a little shady. You know, he came to my house. I don't, it's the trust. They didn't trust him because he didn't do a good enough job presenting the solution and building the trust and going through the whole process. So when Mr. Seller can either sell to us for 120, but this other guy is offering him 130. If he doesn't think that 130 purchase price is going to go through, if he has any doubt that like in 30 days it's like there's a chance this guy flakes, he'd rather take 10 grand less to have the conviction in his mind that his house is going to sell, because he needs to go, he needs to go places, he needs money, whatever the case is. Obviously, if they call you, it's a serious problem if you've identified it and then they want the solution. So that, in my case, is definitely the biggest thing. Sales skills, questions, a lot of that comes into play along the process. I don't want to, act like we don't, ask the right questions and do the right things. But on top, like behind all of that, the core is, I think if you're really an honest person, and you work urgently and you have a good system where you can actually help someone, you're not making stuff and trying to get someone to sell their house. Like if you have those 3 things, you could pretty much kind of not be the best salesman in the world, quote unquote.
Exactly. You could be haphazard because you have dude, you just mentioned something that's so powerful. And it's the fact that when we're on the phone with somebody, when you're on the phone with somebody, you believe so much in the service that you and I offer people. Like if we work the numbers out, we're guaranteed to perform. So we're able to negotiate a lot harder because of that. We're not like you're not on the phone like, maybe we'll be able to buy this house. Like, I don't know. Maybe the numbers, like you hit me up. I tell you exactly where we got to be at. And I'm like, yo, anywhere under this number is let's go. Let's take this thing down. And like, you're able to negotiate with such certainty. And when people on the phone, I was telling this to you yesterday, when somebody on the phone or in person can just subconsciously feel that certainty get communicated, that certainty is probably the most influential persuasion thing you could have, is the certainty. Because the person on the other end, whether you're in person, because we do that, or on the phone, because we do that, they know you're there to help them. And they almost feel they know you don't need the house either, because we're not desperate. We do enough business. We got enough money to where we don't need to fucking buy these houses. Do we want to? Of course, but we don't need to. We don't force deals. Like we let them unfold, and we do everything we have control over, and you do everything you have control over in order to make sure to see if that deal is closable, right? So at the end of the day, that's something I've really noticed with you. At what makes you different is I'm a little bit more of an asshole, and that's just, it is what it is, I guess, at this point. You're very direct, but I think you're much more nurturing than I am. That's a compliment. Like, I'm more like, I just go, like, remember that guy in Connecticut? I'm like, hey, what's the deal? Oh, you're listening? All right, see you later. Have a good day. Like I'm not that patient, right? Like, you're patient, and then you're also persuasive, and you understand how to direct people to take action. That's what makes you really good at what you do. So let's talk about something that people probably don't actually like to talk about. So there's a bunch of sales training out there, which is great. And then there's real, like, tangible subconscious character traits of being a good negotiator. How, like, if you had to, like when it comes to sales training, like, at least with your experience, like, how much of it was sales training, and then how much of it was you just working on yourself and getting really good at the breaking down a lot of bullshit beliefs,
Good question. Good question. I'd say 80-20. So 80% working on myself, 20% my sales skills.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate, because even if you could say persuade someone to sell you the property, like, you presented them the solution, you've built trust, and you showed a ton of conviction, and the person truly believes that you say you're going to do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
If once the computer shuts or your phone goes off, if you're not actually still 100% on tune with getting that person to the finish line, like, you're not living at your standard. So you're basically pretending to be something you're not. Like, if you're like, oh, I'm going to take care, like, I'm going to do everything I say I'm going to do. And then if you're lacking after that, like, you get off work, you go to dinner, whatever. If you just, like, completely tune off and don't, like, care, you're not going to feel good about yourself. You're going to be like, maybe I should do a little more. So what happens is you start to not feel good about yourself a little bit. And if that continues, it's going to show in your character, like you said. So now tomorrow, when I got on the phone, I might have known last night that I blew off Carol and I said, I'll send you this, and I didn't, or, I'm going to take care of something, and I'll just do it tomorrow. I'm going to be less confident on the phone the next day, because I'm going to feel a little bit weary about myself. I'm like, am I that good though? Is Greg are we really going to do, you know what I mean? So basically building that character, and that's what's going to drive you to do the most sales, because it's not necessarily the going negative, the sales, persuasion,
reverse contracts.
Like yeah. Questions, like, those are all great tools in your belt to use along the process. But that alone is definitely not gonna get you deals, because it doesn't matter really as much your tone of voice. I know there's a lot of things out there. Oh, match the tone of the voice of the person, or, match the body language. And, like, yes, I'm sure in certain, like, it probably does help. Yeah. But people don't really, like, I started putting less attention on that, because people don't care about my tone. They feel my energy through the phone, if you would. And it sounds dramatic, but they literally can feel my energy through the phone, and even more in person. And that's what gets the deal. Because, but if I didn't feel that way about myself, like, if I wasn't doing the things I'm supposed to do, they would sense that too. They would sense a little uncertainty in me, and that's going to kill a deal. So I could be a perfect salesman. I could be like, oh yeah, what's going on? They could be my best friend, but if they're not totally certain that I'm going to do good business with them, they might be like, well, you're super cool and nice, and I do believe in you, but I'm not 100% sure.
There's something about it I just don't feel weary about. And it's like, that's the X factor that nobody talks about in sales, because everyone wants to learn what's the best script, what's the best one-liner. If I tell you how many times I've gotten a message, Greg, what's the best one-liner? I'm like, dude, there is no one-liner. The one-liner is get your head out of your ass and fucking commit to being good, right?
I'll tell you a funny story. So I was doing some sales training, and the guy that was in there was like, just go for, here's different closings that you can use. Yeah. Just go, like, if you've identified the problem, whatever, just go for the close. And at the time I was just learning, I was at the dealership, and I was like, okay. And I remember I talked to this one seller, and we basically identified that he wanted to sell the house. We're kind of like, he was just like iffy on the price. He's like, well, it's close, but I'm not really sure. And I just felt confident. I was like, well, I know, what he's looking for and we can do it. And I literally said to him on the phone, I was like, yeah, Bill, like, let's just do it. And he goes, no, I don't want to just do it. No. And he got pissed. He was pissed that I said, like, let's just sign the contract. Like, no, I didn't say let's sign the contract, but I said, let's just do this. Like, let's do it. What are you waiting for, pretty much? And I remember he gave me such backfire. And I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. I was like, I don't know if that works in certain aspects, but that did not work for me. And it's probably not going to work.
Especially in real estate, because it's such a long transaction. It's a high ticket sale. It's not like if you're selling pens or something and someone's going to fork over $3 for something like this, maybe that'll work. But people, you go into escrow, you have attorneys involved. Like, it's not just like an instant transaction where like the next day it's settled. So the seller has all this time to basically back out, right? So like, it's not like if they're 100% if they don't have their mind made up, like before they commit to signing the contract, like you're just going to get backlash on the back end.
Yeah, that's true too. Like, even if you were a master at getting the deal,
it doesn't do anything.
They're not driving off the lot that day as just like because exactly. You buy a car and you paid too much, your interest rate's too much. You might sit on the couch next month and be like, damn, I missed out on that deal, but whatever, like life goes on. But a house is much more, obviously people have their equity. They're, a lot more involved in the house. And then I remember Hormozy dropped the sales training, and then it spoke more my language, which was basically figure out the problem. And then once you get to the end, basically just present the solution. And that's all you have to do. And if they want your solution, they're going to sign the deal and they're going to do the deal with you.
Yeah.
But if they don't, instead of trying to force it, go backwards. Like, just try to figure out what you missed. And if you can't squeeze a deal out of you, it's not a deal. Not everything is closable. And that's why it's important that we're not hungry for every deal, for that reason. Like, people are like, oh, wow. So in case studies before, back to the competition thing too, this might help some people, is we've had offers, 20, 30 grand higher than our offer. And I'll straight up ask about it, not having fear to ask.
You're a savage for doing this. It's what it takes, man.
Yeah. So getting over that fear to ask questions is a huge game changer. Yeah. So I'll say, how do you feel about that? And I've already built trust with the person. So it's just, you're just going to hear the most of the time, not everybody, everything's perfect. Sometimes people are like, whatever. But this guy was like, he's like, they're from North Carolina. I was hoping for someone local, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. So it sounds like this guy's out of state. You don't know him. You might be having doubts that he's going to actually pay that. Yeah, I think so. Well, I'm in Delaware. We've seen the house. We have everything lined up to buy it, but we need to be at this price. And that's how we've won deals. People have been like, you know what?
I don't care. Funny.
20 grand. Brett's local. He's been calling me every time he says he's going to call me. Anytime I need to get in contact with him, he picks up the phone. Oh my God.
Not a shocker.
And I don't want to sell it to someone out of state. But if I didn't know that information, I might have tried to raise our offer. I might have tried to get a last look. There's some things I might not have gotten the deal. But to ask that question is key. I mean, that's something that's become, something we've been doing the past like 6 month heavy is, ask if there's competition on the deal. Are you going to shop around? Are you going to get other offers? Yeah.
People are so scared to ask that, but then they end up getting blindsided. It's like, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that right there is definitely how to win deals against your competitors.
100%. Let's end the show with a good case study because and we'll talk about the one with Pete in Newark because that's That's a really good story on how we take our sales process and we use it to do well in our market, right? So I'll set the stage here, pun intended there, John Martinez plug, and I'll have you kind of pick up when I leave off. So we got this lead. What's his name? Pete out in Newark. This was a while ago, maybe in October. And I remember it was like a Sunday and the lead came in and you were doing something. So I actually called the lead back and set up an appointment for you to go see the house. And what happened? You went on the appointment the first time and then he wasn't making a decision, right? So I'll kind of let you take over from here.
Yeah, exactly. So they wanted to go up to Maine. They've been living in Delaware for 30 plus years. They're retired now and they wanted to get, something new. So called us over there, did a tour of the house, took me through, explained the house, everything like that. And we actually weren't sure exactly what we wanted to offer him as well. So going into this one, the plan was to do the tour, build rapport with the guy, because this is a type of seller. It's not an inherited property across the states where it's vacant and you want to just cash out and make 60 grand. He's actually moving from his house he's been with 30 years to make a huge transition to another state. Like, that's a big deal for somebody. Yeah. So we knew that meeting him in person, building rapport, building trust, like hearing everything that he had to say, like, was very important to get this deal done. So basically the first one was just tour. And after the tour, I said, hey, can we sit down somewhere and have a chat? They pulled up the dining room table. We sat down. I said, okay, so this is, the house looks good, needs some work, but it looks good overall. Thank you for taking me through the tour. And just kind of so I went into the process that I would use on the phone. So same thing, condition. Okay. And what's your reason? We're going up to Maine. Okay. And then we talked about Maine. What do you like about Maine? Whatever. Okay. When do you want to go to Maine? A month and whatnot. Okay. And then we got the price and I was like, well, what do you guys owe in the house?
Oh, I remember this, dude. This is where it got hard. Yeah.
You owe like 95 grand. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, to get up to Maine, like how much do you need? So I'll let you guys in on a little ninja trick here. A lot of the time, if that's the case, because a lot of people might not know exactly what the house is worth or what to ask for. So it kind of breaks things down simple if you ask, what do you want to put in your pocket over what's owed? So essentially he owed 95 grand. And I was like, so you're moving up to Maine, like how much money do you need to get to Maine to make this possible? And Pete goes,
oh my God, I remember this.
Yeah, he goes, well, honestly, we don't really need anything to get up to Maine. And I was like,
I thought the wife was going to fucking murder him.
So I went my lips shut. I look at the wife and she was like, she gave him like the eyes, like, the fuck you doing, Pete? And of
course papers are coming.
And then he was like, well, and they were both like, well, if we can get some money, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I was like, okay. I was like, and then they were like, yeah, 20, 30 grand. I was like, all right, cool. So if we're around 115, 120 on this house, probably going to take the offer. It wasn't the time and place to get into a negotiation. So I basically packed up. Thanks again. Packed up, went home, and we called them the same day. Thanks for letting us see the house. This is what, this is where we need to be at about I don't know, we started at probably 100, 110.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to be here, or we might've went for 120 because I know we bought it for 120. So no, we didn't. Remember, we were creeping up. Right. So I think we offered him like 114. And he was like, like, I don't know. We were hoping for a little bit more, I think, but give me a day to talk about it. He was a very slow guy.
I remember this.
So he's very slow. You'll learn some people are more, well, obviously, but maybe new investors getting into it will learn that everybody kind of works at their own time frame. Some deals are right away, immediately. People are like, sell it, buy it. Other people, it's like them. It's a much more involved. So they're like, we need a night to think about it. So we're like, okay, we've done everything. They're not wasting our time. They ended up shopping the offer, but it's in our opinion at the time, weren't really doing anything but working with us. So we were like, okay, take the day, whatever. We'll touch base tomorrow. And I remember I told you that, and you were like, oh shit. You were like, that's not good, because basically any time kills deals, as you always say. So it's like, we knew at that moment, like, the sooner we can get an accepted offer and get into an agreement, the better chance we have of buying the property. Anything from that point, the chances just go down. So
I'll
the
pick up
next
here real
day,
quick. I'll
take over.
So Brett's telling me, he's telling me the whole deal, and I'm just like, all right. I said, how bad do you want to get this house? And he's like, pretty bad. I said, okay, so I'm going to give you some uncomfortable instructions, and if you follow them, you're probably going to buy this house. I said, Brett, look for a reason to get back inside that property. Do not do this over the phone. By the way, people listening, you people, my lovely listeners, this was like 5 minutes from where Brett lives, like down the street, basically, like off Route 40. Like it's like, right, you know what I mean? Like local property. So he drives back out to the house. I think we told him like you had to go check something out or whatever. So Brett lets himself back into the property. And I said, Brett, on your way out the door, say, Pete, I know we were going to speak on Thursday, but I mean, I'm already here. We might as well try to work something out and get that pesky price out of the way. So you sit down on the couch and I'll let you take over.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it went. I was like, I just need to check the attic real quick or something like that. So check the attic, was like, cool. And then I said that exactly, I know we're going to talk about this tomorrow. Actually, I started off, I actually said, so are we, is there anything else? What other questions do you have about everything? Because we were still negotiating. And he's like, no, we're all good. Like, and I was like, okay, so basically, aside from the price, so I took the price out, aside from the price, are we good? Yes. We want to sell the house. We want to close in 30 days. We want to sell it as is. We'd like to sell it to you. Great. It's just that pesky price. He goes, yep. So I said, okay, I know we were supposed to chat about this, later this evening, but I'm here now. I was like, do you think we could just
whack this out right now? Let's not cock around. Yeah.
So he goes, sure. We sat down and I said, he gave me a little bit of resistance, actually. He said, well, we only spoke a little bit and we have to talk about it more in detail. So he gave me a no, actually. He was like, we have to talk about it more in detail. And I just kind of pushed at that point. I was like, maybe let me know what you guys have in mind so far. And then we can basically see if we can put the pieces together. And he's like, all right, fine. So we sat down in the living room this time, and the wife was there and they were there. And I was like, look, guys, we saw the whole house. We want to buy it. You guys want to sell the property. Like, it's just this pesky price. I mean, how can we figure this out?
Just whack this thing out and get this done.
Yeah. So they're like, well, we really want 125 for it, which we could have bought it for anyway. But so that was a good sign. I was like, okay, at least we have a deal here. So we really want 125, but we were really trying to buy it 120 or under. So we were at like 114. And
that's crazy.
We did a walkthrough, and then I remember I FaceTimed you to walk through the house real quick because you need to check a couple things, and we can chat about how to handle that. So I was like, look, Pete, like we'll in order to get this done, like we'll do 117.5, and he's like, yeah, we were thinking 120 is the lowest we'll go, and I was like, okay, so 120. And that's pretty much the deciding factor in you selling the property to us and moving forward with an agreement. And he's like, yeah. I was like, are you sure? Yes. You 100% positive? Yes. Okay, cool. That's when I called you up. I was like, hey, can we do 120? You were like, yeah, definitely lock it up.
That's the guy who had the printer in his own house and you had to use the seller's
printer. Yeah. So I went back inside. I said, Pete, we'll do the 120. Like, they're like, okay. So you sent me a contract to Dropbox, and so it wasn't already printed, and we didn't want to do DocuSign, so we were trying to figure out. I guess I was gonna either run home or go to the thing, but I just asked Pete. I was like, "Hey, you got a printer?" He's like, "Yep." I was like, "Can we use your printer to print out the contract?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So printed the contract at his house on the spot, and filled it out, had him sign it. And then that's all she wrote, and then
I'll sell it for $35,000. Velocity special. But
yeah.
here's the takeaways from that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, remember he got flaky on us too, so that was an important aspect of it
Oh,
all
all
too.
right. I'll share that. I'll
Okay.
talk about what happened on that deal.
Yeah.
So the end of the story is that we wholesale it for 35 grand successfully. The thing that we left out is that when I went to go wholesale the house, when Brett locked it up, because Brett does the acquisitions, I do the dispositions. So I put out like the deal to my little local Delaware list, which, at the time wasn't anything big. Now it's a pretty decent sized list. And there was some guy on the list who was competing with me, and he didn't know that. Well, apparently, I think he's a liar, but he didn't think that we had it under contract. So he took the freaking email and he actually sent it to the seller. And the email was like, wholesale deal. We had it marked up 35 grand over 120. So whatever that number was. And it said like meat on the bone, wholesale deal, Newark special. Like it was a pretty compelling email, to say the least. By the way, we sold it sight unseen to some guy. Shout out to Jack. Anyway, so the seller called Brett after he found all this out. And Brett was trying to get in touch with me. I was actually right here doing something and I couldn't answer the phone. I was like, dude, you got to like give me an hour. Like I'm on a call right now. And you're like, no, dude, you gotta we gotta chat. Like this Newark deal is taking a shit. And I'm like, all right, give me a minute. So I wrapped up what I was doing. I called Brett and he's like, dude, this the seller found out we're wholesaling it. Like he's freaking out. And what ended up happening was I found out who this guy was. He'll go unnamed, but I called him up and I was like, basically like, dude, like you got to cut this out. Like, I don't care what the fuck you're trying to do. Just cut this out and we're cool. So squash that guy. But then the real hard part was, and by the way, the takeaway was I didn't like curse the guy out. I was just like, hey man, I heard you did this. Don't do it again. Don't call me back. You know what I mean? Like I just kind of was like, put this guy on the shelf. But we called the seller the next morning and I felt bad at this point because the seller felt like he basically got hosed, which he didn't. He got pissed because basically his bottom line was 120. And then when he saw the property for like 145 or whatever, he felt like we took advantage of him. That's what he felt. That wasn't the truth. However, this is how we were able to defuse the bomb, right? Because Brett and I were on the phone basically on like the crisis hotline, talking this guy off the ledge, figuratively. And I was like, you probably feel embarrassed. You feel like you got taken advantage of. You feel like we did you a disservice and you probably feel humiliated at this point. So I took exactly all the emotions he was probably feeling, labeled them out loud, got him to acknowledge us and what we're saying to this guy. And I said, at the end of the day, 2 days ago, you were happy as a clam at 120. And now you see us trying to wholesale this property and you feel like you got taken advantage of. And he's like, yeah. I said, the only thing that changed wasn't the price. It was your perception of the price. And I said, listen, sometimes we wholesale properties, right? We got a bunch of properties going on right now. This one was one we're going to wholesale. It's not going to change the price. It's not going to change anything. You're still going to get your money. We're still going to close whenever you want to close. We're just taking our profit early here, right? And we're able to get this guy to basically calm down and see things from our side of the table. And then at the end, I think I was like, hey, I heard you're moving to Maine, so I'll throw in a free can of bear spray for the inconvenience. And he like laughed. And then we knew we had the deal back together, closed it like a month later. And, that was a good deal for everyone. We all made a bunch of money on it. So here's the takeaway for that. You're going to have obstacles come up on your deals. Not every deal is going to be smooth. You're going to have crap like that happen. I mean, Brett's been in this business long enough where he understands that fucking happens. And, persistence breaks resistance, right? If you are persistent and you're consistent, and, you can build yourself up as well as your sales skills, you can turn into a savage like Brett and you can start buying, 8 houses to 10 houses a month. So Brett, as we wrap the show up here, we've gone a little bit over. What's your advice to somebody, like your 95.5 advice to somebody, if you had to really give them like a punchline or something on how they can make it in this real estate business? Because literally a couple of years ago, you were putting out Cat 5, swinging the bat, and now you're making some serious cash in our business and change your life. So you've been on both sides of the table.
Yeah. Well, I probably sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but definitely wraps around back to your values and your process that you have for people. So back to when Brady was telling us about a business being a factory, how solid is your factory? Like how good is your business really? Because the thing with that Pete in Newark, even if we couldn't wholesale that house, we were going to buy it for
100%.
So when speaking with the seller, I was 100% had conviction because I knew I'm telling this guy, we're going to close when you need us to close. We're going to pay 120 grand. And I wasn't saying, you know, we need a 2-week due diligence period or, you know, we're going to have to back out this deal. I was like, we're going to buy this house and we're going to help you. And so basically just, you know, doing the daily habits, like, you know, being urgent with the people, with your leads, you know, no matter how you feel every day, just realize that you got to pick up that phone. You know, be a man of your word, work with, or woman, you know, work with your integrity, do what you say you're going to do, and have a good process, you know, have something you truly believe in. And if those things are in a line and you keep working every day, you'll learn the sales techniques over time. You know, you'll learn what questions to ask, how to get more information. But ultimately, if you can figure out the cores, that'll basically take you long term, because even if you're good at wholesaling and you're doing a lot of deals up front, if you don't have those values in the back end long term, you might build bad relationships with other, you can build bad relationships with other investors. People are going to start, you know, things people know if you do good business or not. So that would be my, you know, that's my biggest tip, you know, advice is just, you know, the values and having a good system and just doing it consistently every day.
Love it. I couldn't agree more, buddy. And that's why you're a staple to our team. So if people, I know you're not a big social media guy. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you? I think you have a Facebook, right?
I do still have Facebook. Yeah.
What is it? Brett Gennarelli?
Yep. Brett Gennarelli, Gennarelli.
Yeah. I think there's a few Brett Gennarellis too. So it's the one where the guy looks like he's like 26 years old, you know, with like the facial hair and stuff.
One that lives in Delaware.
Yeah, the one that lives in Delaware.
Most listeners probably don't know many people that live down here. So
yeah, exactly. Especially the slower lower, which you're not in. But anyway, buddy, it's always good having you on the show. Thank you for contributing, and I look forward to buying thousands more houses with you, bro. So we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, bro. Pleasure to be here.